Hi guys, welcome back to the program. Today we're going to talk about the Fidelity Zero Fee Index Funds. Now there's 4 in total, but we're going to talk about 3 and I'm going to tell you why. The 3 I think that work the best for the general public is the Fidelity Total Stock Market Index, which is basically a Russell 3000 index, the Fidelity Total International Index Zero Fund, which is basically a FTSE All World ex-US, and the Fidelity Zero Large Cap, which is more or less an S&P 500 fund. We're going to talk about why these are good options. We're going to talk about the performance. We're going to talk about why it might be right for you. You know that one of my biggest mantras on this program is keeping your fees low. Well, Fidelity has had a product since about August of 2018 that has no fees. A whole line of index funds that they call their zero funds. Now, we call them zero fund index funds, but really that's a misnomer because an index fund is a fund that follows an index. To be able to follow an index, the company has to pay that index a fee to use the index. And what the index does is basically it has a basket of stocks, be it the S&P 500, which are the 500 S&P 500 companies, for example, and you pay to have a fund that follows that index. So your funds have basically the same stocks that cover that index. Now, Fidelity has found a way to get away with not using an actual index, creating their own index, which are more or less based on existing index. One of the reasons a lot of people were hesitant to jump into these funds, even though they were zero cost, is because they were brand new. They didn't have a lot of assets under management, and quite frankly, they didn't know how they were going to perform compared to other funds that do similar. So we're going to talk about the 3 that we talked about. The 3 that we're talking about today are the Fidelity Zero Total Market Index Fund, and that's ticker FZROX. We're going to talk about the Fidelity Zero International Index Fund, and that's ticker FZILX. And we're going to talk about the Fidelity Zero Large Cap Index Fund, which is ticker FNILX. And we're going to talk about each one individually. So, you know that I feel like for most people, having a total index fund is the easiest way to invest. You put the money in, you're going to get the return of the market, right? You don't have to pick certain stocks. You don't have to do all your research. You put the money in, it gets what the index gets. It gets what the stock market gets minus your small fee. Now, Fidelity has 0 fees. Now, not only that, something that's also important is that at Fidelity with these funds, there is no minimum to buy into the fund, whether you're investing in a brokerage account or some sort of IRA, whether it be a Roth or a traditional IRA. There's also no minimum to open the account, and there is no expense ratio of 0. All right? Remember, expense ratios are usually expressed as a percentage of, for example, 0.04%, which would be 4 basis points or $4 per 10,000. All right, so the value of 0. Let's look at the breakdown. First, we're going to start with the Fidelity Zero Total Market Index. Now, as you can see, first of all, this fund has approximately 2,500 stocks. So you're getting a very large basket of stocks for no fee. And the breakdown you see is pretty common. And our information technology is about 22.33%. Healthcare is about 14%. Financials, 13.75%. Consumer discretionary, about 10%. Industrials, about 10%. Communications, about 10%. And then the rest is made up of some small sectors. As you can see, overall, it's a large blend. So it's primarily investing in bigger companies, but it does have some small and medium as well in there. Now, if we compare that to the Fidelity Zero Large Cap Index, which is more or less an S&P 500 fund, although it's not using the S&P 500 because they would have to pay them a fee, you notice that our breakdowns are similar. Information technology, about 23%. Healthcare, 14%. Financials, 13.33%. Communications, about 10.25%. Consumer discretionary is at about 10%, and then the rest is made up of some smaller portions. Now this fund has 509 holdings in it, so it's just a little bit bigger than the 500 companies in the S&P 500, right? It also is a large blend, has a mix of growth companies as well as value companies. And again, nice low fee of 0, right? All right, now let's look at the Fidelity Zero International Index. This fund has about 2,200 stocks in it. Remember, it's comparable to the FTSE All World ex-US, more or less. That's the one that it's sort of compared to, although it does not actually follow. Now, if we look at the way this one's weighted, notice financials is a big part, almost 20%. Industrials about 12.33%. Consumer discretionary about 11%. Information technology 9%. Consumer staples about 9%. Healthcare is only 8.4%, so smaller in the international world. If we continue to look at the breakdown of the fund, we notice that 95% of the fund is in international equities, as we would expect. And of that, about 72.5% is developed markets. So that's your bigger countries, bigger established markets, right? And about 22, almost 23% is in emerging markets. It does have a small, very small portion of less than 5% of domestic equities as well. Regional diversification in this fund, you have about 40% in Europe. As I said, about 23% in emerging markets, about 18%, a little under 18% in Japan, 8% in the rest of Asia, about 6.675% in Canada, and like as I said, a little bit less than 5% here in the United States. So you're getting global diversification in this fund. Let's talk about the Fidelity Total Market Index Fund. That's ticker FZROX again. Seeks to provide investment results that correspond to the total return of the broad range of publicly traded companies in the U.S. This is a 0 expense ratio fund. Now, if we talk about the large cap index, that's ticker FNILX. Seeks to provide investment results that correspond to the total return of broad range of large cap companies in the U.S. This is also a 0 expense ratio fund. The Fidelity Zero Total International Fund, that's ticker FZILX, seeks to provide investment results that correspond to the total return of foreign, developed, and emerging market stocks. This is a 0 expense ratio fund. As I said, the Zero Total Market Index is similar but not exact to the Wilshire 3000, which is what most of your total stock market indexes are based upon. In the Fidelity Zero Large Cap Index Fund, it pretty much follows the S&P 500, although it does have a few other stocks in it. Do not claim to follow the S&P 500, but more or less, it's going to track it pretty much exact. For the Fidelity International Zero Index Fund, that's going to be closest to the FTSE All World ex-US. Does have some large, does have some small, has some emerging markets as well. So gives you good global diversification for no expense ratio. You guys, I think if you're looking for a good, easy set of funds to set up your portfolio, I think these are really good choices. I think you can't go wrong with any of the three. If you need US stocks, I would probably go with the Total Stock Market Index. I would go with the FZROX, because then I'm getting 2,500 companies in one fund, and it's not costing me anything. Conversely, as a second, I would probably go with the Total International, because then I can have all the stocks I need worldwide in 2 simple funds with 0 expense ratio. Remember, we talked about in multiple videos, fees, although they don't seem very much over your investment career, they're going to add up to tens, or in some cases, hundreds of thousands of dollars. Now, anytime we can save money on fees, I think it's a good thing. As we said before, these funds are new and their track record is undetermined. They've only been going for about 1.5 years now, but everything I've been able to find shows that they track the other markets pretty similarly. close enough that I wouldn't be concerned about a little bit of drift. So, do I think they're a good fund? I give it 2 thumbs up for all 3 funds. If you want an S&P 500, go with the large cap index. If you want a total stock market, go with the 0 total stock market. If you need an international fund, go with the 0 total international index. All right, you guys, I hope you got something out of this. If you have questions about it, or if there's something you know that I didn't mention in here, please let me know. Put it in the comments. If you're new to the channel, think about subscribing. We're almost to 400. I'm pretty excited about that, you guys. Channel's growing, the community's growing. Let's keep it going.